over, Adama. We're in the clear.
He whispered, but his words were laced with a hint of nervousness. Just as the casket was about to be lowered, "Open am! Abia no pay you," she ordered, her voice sharp. The man swallowed hard and did as he was told. The lid creaked open, but wetin I see, mouth no fit talk am. As the lid of the coffin creaked open, the men jumped back in fear. Captain stepped forward, glanced into the coffin, and immediately bolted, running out of the cemetery. Adeife was baffled. Whatever made Captain run away must be really serious. Slowly, she stepped forward, and as she peered into the coffin before her, she screamed and fell to the ground. Inside the coffin was a plantain trunk, dressed in buba. "Sam, where are you?" Her cry was so loud that it could awaken the spirits. Captain ran to the cemetery gatekeeper, Baba. The dog started barking at the old man. Baba was startled on hearing the dog bark.
Maybe this dog will follow this madam enter here be Disney. Wetin dey do am? Abi spirit don't carry mama go where she no know?
He muttered to himself, but as the dog continued barking, Baba knew something was wrong, so he quickly followed the dog. As Baba followed Captain back to the grave, a cold chill ran down his spine. He had worked at the cemetery for over 10 years and had seen all kinds of strange things, but nothing like this. The dog was frantic, barking and pulling at Baba's trouser leg, urging him to move faster. When they reached the grave, Baba saw Adeife on the ground, trembling.
"Madam, wetin happen? Why you dey shout?"
Baba asked, his voice shaky. Adeife pointed a trembling finger at the coffin. "It's empty. It's not Sam. It's a plantain trunk." Baba's eyes widened as he looked into the coffin. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. Someone had switched the bodies. The big question is, who? And more importantly, where is Chief Sam Ademuyiwa? If you are stumbling upon this video for the very first time, please consider subscribing to this channel and turn on your post notifications so that you never miss any video. Your support helps us create content that you love. You can also check out the description box or the iCard above to see the first and second parts of this video. Now, grab your popcorns as you're about to dive into another thrilling story. Dr. Idris was getting ready to leave the hospital as his shift had ended. It was about 9 a.m. and he was looking forward to a quiet day. But as he made his way toward the exit, he noticed two policemen entering the hospital. His heart skipped a beat, and without thinking, he quickly dodged behind a nearby pillar, his mind racing. What are policemen doing here? He wondered, a cold sweat forming on his brow. Something didn't feel right, and his instinct told him to be cautious. From his hidden position, Dr. Idris watched as the policemen approached the nurse at the reception desk. One of them, a tall man with a stern face, stepped forward and flashed his ID card.
"Good day, ma'am,"
he said in a deep, authoritative voice.
"We are here to see the director or the chief medical officer of this hospital."
The nurse, startled by their sudden presence, blinked in surprise. "Is anything the matter?" she asked nervously. The policeman didn't answer her question directly. His tone was firm, almost menacing.
"Just lead us to the person in charge or you will be arrested for obstruction of investigation."
Fear flashed in the nurse's eyes and her hands trembled slightly as she nodded and led them down the corridor toward the CMO's office. Dr. Idris, still hidden, felt his heart pound in his chest. What's going on? Why are they here? He thought. He knew he couldn't be seen by them, not before he figured out what they were after. He carefully followed them at a distance, staying out of sight. The nurse hesitantly knocked on the door of the CMO, Dr. Abbas, who was busy reviewing some files.
"Come in,"
he called out, adjusting his glasses as he looked up. As the door opened, Dr. Abbas raised his eyebrows in surprise at the sight of the policeman. He removed his glasses and set them on the desk. "Good morning, officers," he greeted them, trying to mask his confusion. "What brings you here this early?" Without wasting any time, the lead policeman introduced himself and his colleague, showing Dr. Abbas their ID cards.
"Dr. Abbas, a case was reported to us this morning regarding the missing corpse of one Chief Sam Ademuyiwa,"
the officer began, his tone serious. Dr. Abbas frowned. confusion deepening the lines on his forehead.
The missing corpse?
He repeated, clearly baffled.
But his body was confirmed and collected by his family yesterday for the burial. How then is it now missing?
The policeman's expression remained grave.
According to the report, the body was exhumed early this morning after the dog belonging to the deceased exhibited strange behavior at the grave. Upon exhumation, it was discovered that the plantain trunk had been buried in place of Chief Sam Ademuyiwa's body.
Dr. Abbas's eyes widened in shock and he leaned back in his chair, his hand covering his mouth.
My God!
He exclaimed, "This is unheard of. How could something like this happen?" The policemen remained silent, their eyes fixed on Dr. Abbas, awaiting his next move. Dr. Abbas quickly composed himself and motioned for them to sit down.
Please take a seat,
he said, his voice a little steadier.
Let me call the mortuary attendant immediately. He should be able to explain what happened.
Meanwhile, Dr. Idris, who had been eavesdropping on the conversation from just outside the office, felt his blood run cold. A plantain trunk? Exhumed? Panic surged through him. His mind was screaming at him to run, and he didn't waste another second. He turned on his heels and bolted down the corridor. The sound of his hurried escape drew the attention of a passing nurse who called out, "Dr. Idris, why are you running?" But Dr. Idris didn't stop. He had to get out of the hospital and fast. There was no time to explain or think. He knew that the police would be after him once they connected the dots. The consequences of what had happened were beginning to unravel, and it was only a matter of time. Adama was in the kitchen, focused on preparing breakfast, when one of the maids approached her. "Madam, your phone has been ringing," the maid informed her. "Oh, I see," Adama responded, wiping her hands on the towel. "Quickly complete the cooking and call me when the food is ready." She handed over the spatula and walked out of the kitchen. As she picked up her phone, Adama's heart skipped a beat. There were over 20 missed calls from Idris. Her brows furrowed in concern. "Why is Idris calling me like this?" she wondered, feeling an uneasy flutter in her stomach. Something was wrong. Without wasting any more time, she dialed his number. The phone barely rang twice before Idris answered, his voice tense and rushed. "Hello, Idris. Sorry I missed your call."
There is no time for apologies.
Idris cut her off, his tone frantic.
We're about to be discovered. Quickly pack your belongings, documents, money, anything you can lay your hands on, and meet me at Lacoste Hotel. I'll send you the address.
"But Idris," she began, her voice shaky with fear. Before she could finish, the line went dead. Adama stared at her phone in disbelief, her mind racing. What does it mean? How were they about to be discovered? Panic began to set in, and her hands trembled as she tried to piece together what could have gone wrong. Back at Dr. Obinna's house, Mr. Williams and Dr. Obinna were having a quiet conversation in the living room when the door suddenly creaked open. Startled, they both jumped to their feet, their hearts pounding. But it was only Chief Sam, looking weak but alive. He had been unconscious for 2 days and had just woken up. Though still frail, he was visibly better than when he was brought in.
"Chief, are you up? You gave us quite a scare,"
Williams said, relief evident in his voice.
"But you just woke up from the dead."
Dr. Obinna teased, trying to lighten the mood, and they all laughed, albeit nervously.
"Have a seat."
Dr. Obinna offered, guiding Chief Sam to a chair. As Chief Sam sat down, Mr. Williams began to recount everything that had happened while he was unconscious. How a plantain trunk had been buried in its place, fooling everyone at the funeral. "How did you pull that off without anyone noticing?" Chief Sam asked, his voice still weak but laced with curiosity.
"I have worked in that hospital for years and I know my way around,"
Mr. Williams explained.
"I had to place you in the coffin initially so your family could see you. But after everyone had left, just before I called the pallbearers in, I quickly took you out and put the plantain trunk in your place."
Chief Sam looked confused. Didn't they open the coffin before burying it?
"That I don't know and I can't tell,"
Mr. Williams admitted.
"But if they did, by now, the whole world would be looking for me."
Chief Sam felt silent for a moment, processing everything that had transpired. Then, with a determined look in his eyes, he said, "I have a plan." Both Dr. Obinna and Mr. Williams turned to look at him in shock. The sudden shift in Chief Sam's demeanor was startling. Despite his weakened state, there was a fire in his eyes that spoke of resilience and determination. Meanwhile, Adeife was driving back to the house with Captain seated quietly in the back seat. Her thoughts were a chaotic mix of confusion and anger over the bizarre events of the morning. The image of the plantain trunk in Sam's coffin haunted her, and Captain's odd behavior added to her unease. What is really going on? She wondered, gripping the steering wheel tightly. As she rounded the bend, her phone rang, jolting her out of her thoughts. She glanced at the screen and saw an unknown number. Frowning, she answered the call, keeping one hand on the wheel. Hello? The voice she heard from the other end made her slam on the brakes, bringing the car to a sudden halt in the middle of the road.
It's Sam, your brother, and I am alive.
Back at the hospital, Dr. Abbas's heart began to pound as they approached the morgue, a sense of unease growing with every step. The hallway was eerily quiet, the usual bustle of the hospital replaced by a tense silence. Nurses and staff members glanced curiously at the trio, Dr. Abbas and the two police officers, as they passed, whispering among themselves. When they reached the morgue, the door was locked and there was no sign of Mr. Williams.
He should be here by now,
Dr. Abbas muttered, his anxiety mounting. Now visibly agitated, Dr. Abbas pulled out his phone and dialed Mr. Williams' number again. The phone rang once, twice, but then it went straight to voicemail. Frowning, Dr. Abbas tried a second time, but there was no response. The officer beside him crossed his arms, his brow furrowed in thought. Frustrated, Dr. Abbas walked back to the reception area, where the receptionist looked at him expectantly.
Call Mr. Williams for me,
he ordered. The receptionist quickly dialed the number, but after a few seconds, she looked up, her expression concerned. His number is switched off, she relayed. Dr. Abbas's unease deepened.
His phone is switched off?
He repeated aloud, as if trying to process the situation. Turning back to the nurse, he asked, who was the doctor on duty yesterday? The nurse, sensing the gravity of the situation, replied quickly, Sir, it was Dr. Idris. Dr. Abbas nodded, but then the nurse added something that made his blood run cold. But I saw him running out of the hospital this morning, sir. Dr. Abbas's eyes widened in alarm.
Running?
He questioned. Yes, sir, the nurse confirmed, her voice wavering slightly. He was acting very strange and didn't stop to talk to anyone. The two police officers exchanged knowing glances, their expressions hardening. The older of the two, who had been silent until now, stepped forward.
Now we have an actual case,
he said with a serious tone. Dr. Abbas felt a sinking feeling in his stomach.
What do you mean?
He asked. The officer sighed, looking Dr. Abbas straight in the eye.
A missing body, a mortuary attendant who has disappeared, and now a doctor fleeing the scene. It's starting to look like more than just a coincidence. We need to find Mr. Williams and Dr. Idris immediately.
Dr. Abbas felt a wave of nausea wash over him. If the body of Chief Sam Ademuyiwa was truly missing, and if Dr. Idris and Mr. Williams were involved in some sort of foul play, the consequences would be catastrophic. He had always prided himself on running a respectable hospital, but now, with the possibility of a scandal on his hands, his career and the hospital's reputation was on the line. Back at the Ademuyiwa's mansion, Adama's heart raced as she hurriedly packed her belongings, stuffing her clothes and valuables into a large box that she forgot to close the door. Her hands trembled as she moved quickly, knowing she had little time left. The house, once her fortress, now felt like a trap closing in on her. The maid's voice startled her. Madam, are you traveling? The food you asked me to prepare is ready, the maid said, her tone innocent and unaware of the storm brewing. Adama barely glanced at her. Don't bother anymore. You can give it to Captain, she replied curtly, continuing her frantic packing. But madam, Auntie Adeife took Captain out last night and she's yet to return. Adama froze. She turned slowly to face the maid. What did you just say? Auntie Adeife and Captain aren't here, ma'am. The maid repeated. A chill ran down Adama's spine. Where had Adeife gone with Captain? And why hadn't they returned? Something wasn't right. Panic surged through her as she dashed into her husband's room, riffling through drawers and cabinets, searching for anything valuable or incriminating. She knew she had to be quick. Just then, her phone rang again. It was Idris. With a shaky hand, she answered.
Adama, why are you wasting so much time? Can you please just hurry up?
Idris's voice was frantic, almost desperate. He didn't wait for her reply before hanging up. The panic in his voice only amplified her own fear. What was he so afraid of? Whatever was happening, it was far worse than she had imagined. She grabbed the last of the documents along with a stash of cash and hurried towards the door. As she stepped outside, dragging the heavy box behind her, the sound of screeching tires made her heart skip a beat. She turned just in time to see Adeife's car speeding through the gate. Before she could react, Adeife stormed out of the car, her face twisted in anger as she charged towards Adama. Where do you think you are going? Adeife spat. You think you can deceive all of us, eh? Adama tried to maintain her composure, but her voice trembled as she spoke. I don't know what you're talking about, ma'am. I'm just going to spend some time with my family. Adeife's laugh was cold and mocking. Oh, I see, she sneered, her eyes narrowing. She turned to the gate and shouted, Sani, open the gate! The gate swung open and the police car drove in. Two stern-looking police officers stepped out, their expressions grim. Adama's heart pounded in her chest as fear gripped her. She could feel the walls closing in on her as the officers walked towards her. Adama's knees went weak and she realized there was no escape. Before the officers could even speak, she dropped to her knees, tears streaming down her face. Please, don't arrest me, she cried out, her voice breaking. It was Idris. He asked me to poison Chief Sam. Adeife's eyes widened in shock. The police officers froze in their tracks, exchanging glances as they processed what they had just heard. The air was thick with tension, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Adama trembled as she looked up at Adeife. Please, ma'am, I had no choice, she cried, her voice breaking. Idris threatened me. He said if I don't help him, he would ruin everything. Adeife's face twisted with a mix of anger and disbelief. She had always suspected Adama of having secrets, but this was beyond anything she could have imagined. The weight of Adama's words hit her like a sledgehammer. You poisoned my brother. Adeife's voice was barely above a whisper, her fury barely contained. Tears streamed down Adama's face as she nodded, her body shaking with fear. It was Idris. He planned everything. He said we would be together if Chief was out of the way. But I didn't know it to come to this. Please forgive me. The police officer stepped forward, one of them pulling out a pair of handcuffs.
Mrs. Adama Ademuyiwa, you are under arrest for the attempted murder of Chief Sam Ademuyiwa and for conspiring with Dr. Idris to cover up the crime.
One of them said sternly as the cold steel of the handcuffs clicked around her wrists. Adama knew her life was over. The dreams of wealth, luxury, and freedom had turned into a nightmare of guilt, betrayal, and imminent doom. Adeife stepped back, her mind racing. This was more than she had bargained for. She had come here to confront Adama, to force her to tell the truth, but she hadn't expected to uncover something this dark. Captain's back jolted Adeife back to reality, and she turned to see a car pulling into the driveway. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Chief Sam Ademuyiwa stepped out of the car, looking weak but very much alive. Adeife's heart leaped with relief and joy as she ran towards her brother, embracing him tightly. Tears streamed down her face as she held him, the fear and uncertainty of the past days finally melting away. Adama, now in the grip of the police, turned to see Sam. The sight of him alive, standing and well, crushed her. Tears filled her eyes, not from relief, but from the overwhelming guilt and shame that consumed her. She had lost everything. The police officers, unyielding, shoved her into the back of the car. She glanced at Sam one last time, wanting to say something, anything, to explain, to apologize, but the door slammed shut, sealing her fate. As the car began to move, she caught one final glimpse of Sam, who stood there surrounded by the people who truly love him. Captain, hearing his master's voice, forced himself out through the car window and bolted towards Sam. The dog's joy was palpable as he barked and wagged his tail, jumping up to greet his master. Sam knelt down to embrace Captain, his faithful companion. The domestic staff, Sani included, all rushed out to greet Chief Sam. Their cheers and smiles were filled with genuine happiness. Sam was home, and with his return, a sense of peace and normalcy was restored. Adama and Dr. Idris faced severe legal consequences. Their trial was swift with damning evidence and testimonies leading to their convictions. Adama, once a woman who seemed to have everything, was sentenced to life in prison for her role in the attempted murder of her husband. Dr. Idris, the mastermind behind the plot, received a similar sentence. Both would spend the rest of their lives paying for their crimes. Mr. Williams, who had risked everything to save Chief Sam, stopped working as a mortician. In recognition of his bravery and loyalty, Chief Sam offered him a position at the Ademuyiwa company, a job that not only provided stability but also restored Williams' dignity and honor. Dr. Obinna, who had used his skills to save Sam's life, was heavily compensated. Chief Sam ensured that the doctor's kindness was rewarded, providing him with the resources he needed to live comfortably. As for Adefe, she remained by her brother's side, her loyalty unwavering. She had been the only one to suspect that something was amiss, and her persistence had played a crucial role in uncovering the truth. Sam never forgot this, and their bond grew even stronger. Moral lesson. This story serves as a reminder that deceit, no matter how cleverly executed, cannot escape the truth forever. Adama and Idris, driven by greed and desperation, thought they could manipulate their way to a better life, but their actions led to their downfall. The truth, represented by Captain's unwavering loyalty and Adefe's persistence, always finds a way to come to light. Those who act with integrity, courage, and kindness, like Mr. Williams and Dr. Obinna, are ultimately rewarded. This story also highlights the importance of doing what is right, even in the face of danger or uncertainty. It also shows that true loyalty and love, like that of Captain and Adefe, are powerful forces that can bring justice and healing, even in the darkest of times. If you enjoyed this story and would like to see more interesting stories, please consider subscribing to this channel, not forgetting to turn on the bell notification icon so that once another interesting story is being posted, you will be the first to be notified. You can also check out these videos here. I promise you won't be disappointed. Till we meet again in my next video, remain blessed.